The fairy tale, The Sleeping Princess in the Forest. Once upon a time, there was a powerful kingdom where people lived in abundance and happiness. However, they were not completely content because their wise king and queen had not been blessed with a child. The king and queen prayed to the Almighty every night, asking for a child. Their prayers must have touched the heart of the Almighty because after some time, the queen gave birth to an incredibly beautiful princess. The good news spread far and wide, and 7 kind-hearted fairies came to the palace to congratulate the royal family. The king ordered a grand feast to be prepared to honor the fairies. Just as everyone was about to raise their glasses in celebration, a cloud of black smoke filled the room, and an evil witch, old and haggard, appeared. The witch spoke in a menacing tone to the king and queen, saying, "Why didn't you invite me to the feast? Because of your parents' mistakes, your daughter will suffer a great misfortune." Ignoring the furious witch, the other fairies began bestowing magical gifts upon the princess. One fairy granted her beauty, another gracefulness, the next bestowed dancing skills, followed by a sweet voice and musical talent. Before the 7th fairy could speak, the evil witch waved her staff, forbidding anyone to utter another word. She laughed wickedly and exclaimed, "As for me, I wish for this little girl to be pierced by a spindle and die." Before the witch could finish her words, the 7th fairy raised her magic wand and said, "I cannot undo the witch's curse, but I can alter it slightly. I wish for the princess to not die if she is pricked by a spindle. Instead, she shall sleep for 100 years until a handsome and brave prince comes to awaken her." Although the 7th fairy had spoken, the king remained haunted by the witch's curse. He ordered that all spinning wheels in the kingdom be burned, fearing any harm that could befall his daughter. Time flew by, and the princess grew into a beautiful young lady. The king and queen joyfully watched their daughter and believed that the terrible curse of the old witch had been broken. One day, while exploring the palace, the princess stumbled upon a small door that led to a narrow staircase. The staircase led to a tiny room where an old woman sat spinning. The princess had never seen a spinning wheel before, so she curiously watched the old woman. Intrigued, she asked if she could give it a try. The old woman stood up and gave her place to the princess. However, as the princess was spinning, she pricked her finger on a needle and fell into a deep slumber. The old woman ceased spinning, revealing her true form as the Wicked Witch. She laughed triumphantly, saying, "Ha ha ha! Now your parents will regret offending me." Meanwhile, in the palace, the princess was nowhere to be found, and everyone searched frantically. They searched high and low but couldn't find a trace of her. After a long while, the king and queen discovered her in the small room. At that moment, the 7th fairy appeared and guided him to the most beautiful chamber in the palace. There, the princess could sleep peacefully until the moment she would awaken. The fairy wanted to ensure that after 100 years, the princess wouldn't be alone, so she waved her magic wand and put everyone in the castle to sleep just like the princess. They would all awaken together after 100 years. In an instant, the entire palace fell into silence. To protect the castle, the fairy transformed the surroundings into an impenetrable thicket of thorns. The thorny bushes were so dense that nothing could pass through. And then 100 years passed. One day, a young and brave prince went hunting through that area. He heard people talking about the cursed princess and decided to visit the ancient castle to see for himself. The prince swung his sword, trying to cut through the thorny trees to make a path. But to his surprise, no matter how much he chopped, the trees immediately grew back as before. The prince didn't know how to break through the thorny trees when the 7th fairy appeared. She gifted the prince a sword that shone like lightning. With that sword, the prince was able to pass through the thicket of thorns and enter the castle. Meanwhile, from the top of a tall tower, the evil witch looked through her magic crystal ball and knew everything that was happening. Enraged, the witch slammed the crystal ball on the table and exclaimed, "That foolish prince, how can he break my curse?" Then, the witch transformed into a giant dragon and flew to confront the prince. The fierce dragon rushed forward, spewing fire in an attempt to burn the prince. The prince wielded his magical sword, wrapping it around the flames and then swung, sending the fire back toward the dragon. The enraged dragon swallowed the flames but was also planning to devour the prince. However, the prince swiftly dodged the dragon's attack and thrust his sword into its neck. The dragon writhed in pain, thrashing about and destroying the surrounding trees and grass, eventually transforming back into the old, helpless witch. The witch struggled to open her eyes and helplessly looked at the courageous prince. Moments later, she breathed her last breath and collapsed. Suddenly, the sky cleared, and the sun shone brightly. Warm golden light spread throughout the ancient castle. The dormant castle that had remained silent for hundreds of years suddenly came to life. Trees and plants sprouted new shoots, and all kinds of flowers competed to bloom, displaying their vibrant colors and fragrances. The prince hurriedly ran into the palace, and wherever he went, everyone and everything awoke from their slumber. No one realized that they had slept for 100 years. Finally, the prince found his way to the magnificent chamber where the princess still peacefully slept. The prince stood in awe as he gazed at the beautiful princess, and then gently leaned down to kiss her. The curse of the evil witch was instantly broken. The princess woke up, bewildered, and looked at the unfamiliar young man. The prince smiled and helped the princess to her feet, telling her everything that had happened. He then escorted her to meet her king and queen. The king expressed his gratitude to the prince for awakening his daughter and expressed his intention to marry the princess to him. Overjoyed, the prince immediately knelt before the golden throne, asking for the princess's hand in marriage. A few days later, the entire kingdom was filled with a festive atmosphere. The people prepared happily for the wedding of the prince and the princess. On their wedding day, neighboring kingdoms came one after another to congratulate them, and the celebration lasted day and night. The 7 fairy godmothers who had once blessed the sleeping princess also attended. They bestowed magical blessings upon the couple, wishing them the best. 9 months and 10 days later, the prince and the princess gave birth to a prince. The prince grew up to be intelligent, charming, courageous like his father, and kind-hearted and talented like his mother. The castle that had once been engulfed in 100-year slumber was now filled with happiness and joy. You have just heard the fairy tale of The Sleeping Princess in the Forest, also known as Sleeping Beauty. It tells the story of a beautiful princess who was cursed and fell into a deep sleep for hundreds of years until she was awakened by a brave prince.